Hello, and welcome to Beyond Average, where we feature entrepreneurs who are building businesses that don't just grow, they scale, transfer, and create real value through the four intangible capitals. So I'm Kristin Carlson, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Courtney Smith, founder of Ascora Field Service Management Software. So thank you for joining me today, Courtney.
Thanks for having me on, Kristin. It's great to
Awesome.
be here.
So please share with us when and how did you get this company started?
I guess it kind of goes a long way back in terms of like how the whole business came about. From my background, I've always been interested in computers and technology. A little bit different from how I grew up. I grew up on a farm, like out in the middle of the Australian kind of outback kind of area of things, and first started actually building up software for my dad, who was running the farm. So it's like, what can we get in place that he can manage the records and herds and all the other stuff better? Because at that point we had cows. And that initial thing, spent a lot of time looking back over it, building that software for him. Didn't really go much past that point, but it kind of got us into what can we do in that space. And then around that kind of same time, jumping through university, getting various qualifications, all that kind of thing. But then coming out, and I was working for a range of different businesses over time. But as my wife was really encouraging me to start a business, because she's going, okay, you're technically very strong, you can work magic, you can do things in half the time of others. Other guys will take days, you can get it done in hours, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, let's actually start it. And it's that kind of encouragement, from my wife. It's going, yeah, you should do it. What's stopping you from doing it? Give it a shot, and let's just see how it goes, and kind of not be afraid to take that jump. But it's kind of taking that jump, knowing you got the person that's there to also support you and kind of be with you on that journey as well.
Right, that's so important. And how did you pick the industry that you wanted to build software for?
We really kind of just happened from the different companies we were integrating with or working with. Because we did software at the start of the company for pretty much anyone. We did and they're really interesting projects. We did projects around crystallization of salts in ponds for mining of like fertilizers. We did share trading and liquidity. We did some things for like Red Bull air racing back in the day. And they've started to work with a lot of different trade and construction groups. And it started to go, when we're looking at it, that they all had various issues with managing time and being efficient and knowing how the jobs are tracking. And even some where the guys have to come back to the office to collect plans and paperwork. And you think, okay, that time traveling back and forth alone and filing things away and having everything manual was kind of stifling what they could do, or it's just taking a lot more hours in the day. And same kind of, we went from that kind of construction plumbing to going working with HVAC clients. And it was the same thing. Whether it's a big client, we had one that was himself an apprentice and one that was the other end of the scale a lot larger, but they're still tracking where did the receipts go for that job? I thought we used gas in this job. When were the guys there? Did we have that form that we completed? And we looked at the market and went, well, we could build something that we think can really address all these things and be configurable to that. So that way it can give those businesses that platform to run from. And they can get back that time of the day, and you can get to the point where business owners weren't just, I've got to do this schedule after hours, and I can't spend Sunday with family because I'm sending off these reminders and I'm sending this off to the guys and I'm doing this paperwork. If we can bring those things in so a system can control them more. And it's one thing where I've always had, I guess, that very technical focus coming from that kind of technical programming background. I always loved, computers and everything else, and grew up watching Transformers and MacGyver and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of like how I was going to go at some point. So I went from that to robotics to programming, and I was really fortunate that my wife could kind of handle everything else. So she was the co-founder in the business, and she would kind of put the processes and procedures and things in place and start to hire that team around me. And I was focusing on, okay, what projects are we working on? What, who's working on what? How are we delivering that to the client? How's it working for them? And that really, it's that partnership of us working together that really kept things moving along. Where otherwise, without having her next to me, we definitely wouldn't be where we are now.
Right. And it sounds like you really had a vision or really working to solve problems that you were finding the construction industry had, right? And
Yeah,
you,
definitely, definitely. Because it
so so it started the two of you, and then your company started to grow. I mean, can you just share how you grew your team?
really came down to looking after the clients. The clients we're working with. We kind of went from one client to the next client to different industry types, to different, smart homes versus landscaping versus, pretty much every single trade. We'd always have, it'd be great if the system could do this or this. And part of it's kind of filtering out which of those things are going to have the most impact for us. Because we just, it's impossible to build all the requests for everyone. And trying to build in, yes, we've had a lot of requests for this, and we can take this amount of time, we can build it. And we started to build out the teams, I guess, around it. So it started to become like, if we were starting to hire for, let's take some administrative load away from us. Then we started to get more of the kind of admin team around us. We need more people to help with support. Let's start to flesh out that support team. and things from the development side and specializing on mobile apps versus web services versus accounting integrations, and kind of building up those teams as we scale the customer base and scale the company.
All right. And is your team in Austin with you, or do you have people around the world?
Now we have people around the world.
Okay.
Yeah, predominantly around all of Australia, where the initial team was.
Okay.
It's myself and Amelia that are now in Austin, in Texas. So we recently relocated. We've been here just over a month and a bit.
Oh, okay. You're new to Austin. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's yeah. That's the kind of thing that's exciting. Is now we get to work and interact with a lot of different businesses, and although some things are different, like date formats and things are kind of opposites here to Australia. A lot of the problems they face is not dissimilar. They are still the same. How can we schedule? How can we do it efficiently? How can we get that feedback loop from reporting to know how we're tracking? What's our numbers like? What's our margin on certain jobs? Are we worthwhile doing a certain job or not? Those kind of things.
So can you just describe like who is your target client then? Who are the ones that can really leverage the software the best?
We find it's the area of client that is around a company of about 10 people upwards, because they start to hit the issues that, and in terms of the business type, it's really any of those kind of home services trades or construction trades, because Ascora can handle the smaller maintenance jobs as well as the larger kind of multi-day, multi-month project jobs. We find that those home services like plumbing, electrical, HVAC, fire services, painting, roofing, can then benefit from very similar things. They'll use different building blocks in Ascora, but they still benefit from it. When they get to that kind of size of 10 or more, they're starting to hit a lot more like points of friction and roadblocks, and they need more from the system. And that's the point where they go, great, I need something in place. And that's what Ascora can give them, of the automations and the real configurability of it. So you can go through and change the names of a lot of stuff in the system. You can change the workflows of it. You can create dedicated workflows for certain kinds of clients you're dealing with, certain default settings along the way of that path for them, to try and streamline what those processes are. And they may be a little bit different business to business, but it could be the case where you need a certain safety form filled out when the guys start. And you have it so once they actually do go, yes, I'm starting now, the Ascora app on their phone pops up and goes, great, you've got to fill out this pre-start or this safety form or these particular details. And then as they go through the job, there's a checklist to make sure they're following that process too. And there can be other forms at the end or the end of the day, depending on what they're doing. But it's making sure from a business perspective, they're following those processes through that's kind of been set for them. And that's what we'll find often someone coming on board, it becomes an evolution of how much they're using, because they can kind of get that kind of core process in place and then go, actually, we need to dial in more about our process for this kind of work and add a form that's going to capture these workflows. So they're kind of streamlining and systemizing their own steps the more they can use it.
Awesome. So before we started the recording, you were just sharing that you do spend time with your clients and you've gotten some great feedback or testimonials from them. Could you just share some of the success stories you've had?
Definitely. It's one of the great things I think about building software, is about how it can really impact people. And that's the part I really get the kick from, is that and going through and doing those kind of testimonial videos was great, because it gives us a chance to actually spend a day with them, effectively going through, chatting to them face to face, being in their office, talking to the guys in the team. That gets cut down to like a 2-minute testimonial, but it's the thing of spending that day with them and hearing about what things they love, how it's changed the business. And one of the clients talking to was like, before Ascora, we were like a deer in the headlights. We didn't know where we're going or what was happening, and it's given us that clarity on which kind of jobs are more profitable, which suburbs, customer types. You can really dial into that whole matrix and dimensions of data to work it out. Or another client that was, in like car park construction sort of things, where we're talking to him and he was saying that with coming on board to Ascora, they've kind of transitioned from a point in their lives where, as business owners, they didn't get to have that time to have the family holidays because they're working on the business and the business became that kind of all-consuming thing. Then here, okay, yes, we've actually managed to take the first family holiday in years and years and get that time back and be able to take time off. But even while doing that, had grown their business from 2 million to 10 million over that time. So it's those kind of stories, I think, they really get that enjoyment out of working with the clientele that we get the privilege to do.
Right. And like you were sharing, it does reduce owner dependency, right? Now they have a system that can manage the business instead of them trying to manage the business, right? To give them more in their life. And then their business grows, right? And then
exactly.
As a result, it grows. So
yeah, that's it. I think one of the guys I talked to expressed it as, even if I'm not in the business, Ascora is. And the guys can go to Ascora and get the information they need. They're not coming to him. It's that he gets to take that kind of step away from being that bottleneck in how they're working to then go, the system can handle it. Everything's not coming back to me. I'm not being that kind of unintentional break on the business. I can get more people and more teams, and I'm no longer that central filter that everything's going through. But the difference being, if I want to, I could jump on and check any of those projects at any point in time from anywhere and get that information to know.
And that's music to my ears as a business coach, right? I mean, that's our
Yeah.
goal is how do we reduce that owner dependency? How do we put the systems and processes in place to help run the business? Because it just makes the business more valuable. So that's kind of the magic that happens once they take that step and really invest in software or systems to improve their processes. So excellent.
Yeah.
Courtney, would you have any advice you would give an entrepreneur that's starting a software company?
I think it comes down to really being intentional with your time. At the end of the day, everyone's got the same hours and what we do with those hours and how it works through. I think you also need to have someone there with you that is like the opposite, where I'm lucky that I could focus on that technology side, and that's what I loved and what I'm great at. But I had the benefit of having my familiar there with me that she had the capability and the foresight to do a lot of things in place that even I hadn't pictured. She would go through and start to put the different steps and processes in place internally that then helped us to grow and get more people on the team and then to ultimately be able to better service the clients.
Excellent. And do the two of you, do you have strategic visioning sessions? Where do you want the business to go? Where do you guys think it can go to?
We do. And we spend a lot of time around that kind of area of things. And it's really that kind of the huge gap in the market of dealing with that range of businesses, the businesses that are that kind of, hitting that kind of messy middle of what's happening where a simpler system doesn't help anyone, need something else. But we think that's very much an underserved market because for that size, for them to jump to enterprise software, generally doesn't make sense. It's a lot more costly and there's a lot more steps and processes and everything else involved with it that can make it a lot harder. And really that's where we come in that, we've got that level of functionality, but also intentionally keeping it as simple as possible. And there's like one of the great quotes I love is that any fool can make something complicated. It takes genius to make it simple. And that's where we try to apply that back into the software. Because at the end of the day, if we can make it simpler, it's easier for someone to learn it. And it's significantly easier for someone using it day in, day out as well.
Awesome. Well, Courtney, I want to thank you for joining me today on the podcast and just sharing insights into how your business is growing. And congratulations. And I'm hoping that we can have some construction people watching our video and really take advantage of your software. So thank you so much.
No, excellent, Kristin. Thanks for today.
Have a great day.
You too.